Tafshin Yud Beis, that has obviously
recording in progress.
Same Kviyas Gimel Nisan like this year. So in this week's Haftarah, it says Amzu Ytzarti, this nation I have created, I have formed from me. Tilosi Saperu, they will relate my praises. That's why I created them. I created them to tell over and to speak my tehillos, my praises. So the Gemara focuses on the word zu over here. Why does he have to say am zu yatzarti? This nation I formed for me. It could be just am yatzarti. What's we know we're talking about the Yidden, etc. What's the point of zu? So the Gemara says Yavai zeh, that the one who is called zeh, which we'll say later on, is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and we have a pasuk that Moshe is called zeh. V'yekabel zois, he will receive this, referring to zois haTorah. The Torah is called zois. Mi zeh, Hashem is also called zeh, as it says zeh keli vanveyu. La'amzu, to this nation. So Amzu El Yisrael, and then the Gemara concludes, this nation is referring to who? It's talking about El Yisrael, Shenamar, like it says in this week's Haftarah, Amzu Yatzarti, this nation I have formed. Well, that is the Mechilta al Pasuk in a similar vein. It's brought down the Mechilta on this Pasuk as well. Ad Yaver Amzu Kanisa. Until it says, we have this in Az Yashu, we say it every day, until this nation that you acquired will pass. So over there also we use the term amzu. So it says over there, the Mechilta says Shekol Olam Shalcha, the entire world is yours, and still in all, even though the entire world is yours, Ve'ein Lecha Am El Yisrael, all you have is the nation of Yisrael. Shenamar, like it says, Amzu Yatzarti Li, this nation, specifically the Yidden, I have formed for me. It's a special thing for me. And the Mechilta goes on to say, Yisrael Nikru Kinyan, Yisrael are called an acquisition of Hashem. Shenamar Amzu Kanisa, like it says in Az Yashir, this nation you have acquired. So now the Rebbe goes back to the concept, both of the Mechilta and the Gemara that calls the Yidden Amzu. When you understand my milos inyan the zevazu, what's bechlal the quality and the advantage of saying ze and zu, the masculine and feminine forms of the word this. Shal ze amru yavi zev yekabel chul amzu. This will receive and receive that, and they will give it to this nation. So he says as follows. In the Gemara earlier, he uses other plays on words, but those plays on words are having to do with a positive connotation, has to do with some type of quality. So the Rebbe goes on to explain the Bishleim line 9, Masha Amr B'Gemara Le'ilmini, what it says in the Gemara prior to this Yavai Zev Yekabel Zois Mizev Yitin Lamzu. Before that it says Yavai Adir V'Yekabel Chulu, let a mighty one come and receive. Yavai Yedid Chulu, let a beloved one come. Yavai Toiv Chulu, let a good one come. That makes sense. Harein Yanim Eila Adir Yadid V'Toivim Tarim Ala. These three different descriptions of a mighty one, a beloved one, a good one, are descriptions of quality. So we can understand why the Gemara makes a big deal about it, brings psukim to bring that Moshe Rabbeinu is called by these descriptions, etc. But what they said that zeh should come. We need to understand what's the advantage, what's the quality, what it says zeh, and with the whole thing zeh and zois and the Eibishter is called zeh, and Moshe Rabbeinu and the Yidden are called zu. Seemingly, what's the significance? Line 14. Gam tzarech lahavin, also we need to understand. In Omer Azal the Chazal said, Kol hanavim nisnaba b'koi, Moshe nisnaba b'zeh. All the Nevi'im, when they said nevuah, they said koi, like this. Hashem said, koi amar Hashem, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, zeh hadavar shedibra Hashem. This I know this means from Moshe Dafke Shayach L'Dargazeh. Specifically, Moshe has to do with the level of Zeh. So it's not just that we find a pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu was called the Zeh that received the Zois from Zeh, etc. There's something unique about Moshe with the connection with Zeh. If so, if Moshe Rabbeinu is unique in that regard, how do we say that all Yidden are on a level of Zu? Now we say Amzu, Kanisa, and Amzu, Ytzarti. True, this is feminine and this is masculine. Zeh is masculine and Zu is feminine, but still, it's the same idea, but it's just in feminine. Whereas we don't say the other Avim said in a feminine manner, Zu. They just said Koi because they had no connection seemingly with the idea of Zeh. So how do we say the whole Klal Yisrael has a connection with the idea of Zeh, but in the feminine? Two lines in the bottom. Additionally, we need to understand Mashanemar Amzu Yatzarti Li Zu Lashon Nekeva. We need to understand why is Itaki used the word the feminine. The Lechura Havalela Meimar Amze Lashon Zachar, top of page Vav. He should have used the term Zeh in the masculine. Like it says, we find that you could refer to the Jewish people as Zeh, Ki Amcha Hagoy Hazeh, because your nation, this people. So we see that the Yidden can be called by the masculine. So therefore, why does it say in both in Araf Torah and in Oz Yoshir, Madu and Namar Amzu Yatzarti, Amzu Ga'alta? Why does it say both times when it describes the Yidden, it uses the feminine form of Zu, Amzu Kanisa Lashon Nekeva. Oizbeis, line 4. This will be understood by first prefacing Bir Maimer Hazal, the explanation of what the Chazal state. Kol Navim Nisnabu B'Koi. All the Nevi'im, they said the prophecy with Koi, like we mentioned before. Moshe Nisnabu B'Zeh. Moshe said his prophecy with the word Zeh. What's the difference between them? The Nehefrit means Elokoi, who the difference between Zeh and Koi is Shatoy Ar Zeh Mashmoi Shezehu Adover K'Moshehu. The description of the word Zeh indicates that this is the matter as it is. He recognized the matter exactly in all of its details. But the description of Koi seems to indicate he doesn't recognize and know the matter in all of its details exactly. It's only a general matter. This is what means that all the prophets said prophecy with Koi. That their prophecy was in a non-luminous lens. For example, like when you have something that blocks and doesn't allow the light to completely come through a glass, even a mirror is considered a non-luminous lens because it doesn't let light pass through. You can't see from one side to the other. Meaning, what does it mean in the actual meaning of the nevuah of the other neviim? Their revelation down here below was not the way it's above mamish. In other words, they didn't see all the way through. They only saw like a reflection, etc., etc. As opposed to Moshe Rabbeinu, when he said nevuah, he said zeh. How was he able to say so? How was he able to attain this? Because the way Moshe Rabbeinu was down here below, he was the same way, he was no different than he was in the world of Atzilus. Just like in Atzilus. Hashem is one with the life forces. Usually translators are referring to the Oides that are in the Kalim. And he's one with the bodies, meaning he's one with the vessels, with the Kalim themselves. So, in other words, it's thoroughly and completely godliness, Natzilus. Thoroughly and fully alakus. It's understood that when a person is on that level, he sees everything. So, but when you leave Atzilus, when you come down to this world, seemingly you leave all that behind. So he says, by Moshe Rabbeinu was no different down here. In this very level of the level of Atzilus, Moshe was at, also down here below. The Shechina was speaking out of his throat, just like it completely one with the Eibishter, with Alakus. Therefore, if the Shechina is speaking out of his throat, which is something unique that we say about Moshe Rabbeinu, therefore he used the term Zeh, meaning he's showing it and pointing it out with all of the details. Line 20. The explanation of the matter is the description of this, that you really know what it is only possible on matters of holiness. How come? All other things you cannot point at them and say, this is it. Top of page Zayin, this is what it actually is. Why is that so? You're not seeing what it actually is. Because by all other things, what's visible, that's not the very thing itself. The very thing itself is the goal and the purpose that for that sake it was created. In other words, what it is what it's about. What it is its purpose. That's its meaning. That's its reality. But in anything outside of Kedusha, that's only the external aspect of the item. You're seeing the physicality of it. Bilvad, only that. It's only ancillary, it's only secondary to the intention and the purpose. The true being of the thing is the purpose from which it was made. Specifically in holiness, it's possible to say the description this, because in matters of holiness, whatever you see, that is the thing itself. That in Kedusha, it's not a means, it's not something for something else. It's not the means, it's the end itself. The Kedusha is what it's all about. And according to truth, in Kedusha itself, truly, every other level is still not yet the real Zeh. The description Zeh is only possible to say on Hashem's very essence, the infinite. The Kivin Sha'atzmus Mitziusim Atzmus, since Hashem's essence, his very being comes from himself, he's not dependent, and he doesn't come from something else. And he is the true existence as opposed to everything else. Therefore, this is it. Like the buck stops here, this is all there is. But whatever is not Hashem's essence, even in Kedusha, you cannot describe it with a description of this, since it's not a true existence. Because what's visible is not what it truly is. Its very being is only from Hashem's essence. So let's say Atzilus, Keser, whatever that's not Atzmus, that's not truly it. It is dependent on something else. So what it truly is Atzmus that made the Keser, that made Atzilus, etc., etc. So Zeh is only applicable in Kedusha, but ultimately it's only applicable in Hashem's essence. He says in line 17, also by Yidden, it's applicable the description of Zeh. How come? How could that be? We just now said that if there's something that's not the essence, it's seemingly not applicable, the term Zeh. So how by Yidden do we say the term Zeh? So he says, because of the Yidden's cleaving to Hashem's very essence. Like it says, that you are cleaving, you should cleave in him, you shall go in his ways. So that very cleaving to Hashem is what makes them a level of also because of the cleaving. That we say that the Torah, the Yidden and the Torah and Hashem are entirely one. That we don't just say that they're cleaving together. In other words, they're two separate things that became joined. It's like, it says kulachad, it's entirely one. Since Hashem's very essence, his very being is from him very self, therefore there's also in the Yidden something that is similar to the fact that it comes from its very self. It's also applicable by the Yidden, the description of Zeh, because Yidden like incorporate within themselves this nature of Mitziyusi, and therefore, since they have this, their being like Kaviyachal coming from their very selves, therefore it's possible for Yidden as well to be called Zeh. Now the Rebbe is going to add another reason why Yidden are called Zeh, and he's going to go a bit of a lengthy thing, like a page or two, to be able to reach, about two sides, to be able to reach to the conclusion of why Yidden are called Zeh. So he says in line 26, additionally, the kivin sheretzayne shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, since the will of Hashem is she'inyanim the Yisrael lo yiyu ba'ofen the nam the chsufa, top of page ches. Hashem's will was that whatever Yidden have should not be in a way of bread of shame. They should not get it unearned. It shouldn't be gifted to them. But rather Hashem wanted Hashem wanted it specifically through a person's service and specifically through free will. Malachim also serve Hashem, but they don't have free will in general. Hashem wanted that a person should earn it through his service, through his free choice. Therefore, for a Yid to be able to earn whatever he's getting, Hashem made this opposing to that. He created this physical world that it seems to be, and it looks like that the physical world as well proclaims and indicates that its very being is from itself. Until it's filled with klip sitra, that they are claiming that to me is the Nile and I made myself. It's a description of ego and self-centeredness. I, and there's nothing else besides me. In other words, that's the ultimate level. Not just does he think that he is also something, but there's nothing else besides me. This is the worst level of klippa. This means there's also a level of Zeh, of Sitra Achra, meaning the Sitra Achra claiming and saying that I'm a Zeh, because there's nothing else besides me. The God, I don't know, there's me, that's all. Zeh, that's where it stops. Pratis Yaiser, more specifically, even though the Sitra Achra proclaims that and makes itself into a Zeh, also Sitra Achra itself knows that there's nothing besides Hashem. The Sitra Achra was given permission to confuse the person and to convince him against Hashem. As all the Chazal say, that Hashem wrote, for example, a Torah in a certain way, and whoever wants to make a mistake about it, they can go ahead and make a mistake. Meaning that this is given permission from above to make mistakes. That he can make a mistake and imagine that his very being comes from himself. But why was the Sitra Achra given this power? The intention in this is so that they should withstand the test. Through that, the reward will be much greater than if they would not have withstood the test. Okay, the Isa Bezoyer Parshas Truma, like it's brought down the Zoyer and Parshas Truma. The marshal has Zoynish Mafatlas Ben Amelech, the marshal of the immodest woman that tries to convince the prince to do an Aved. V'kasher Ben Hamelech Aymed Ben Esoyin Azai Yigdos Chorei, when the prince withstands the test, so then his reward is great. Now the Rebbe says an interesting shot when it says greatness of reward. And greatness of reward, by explaining this pshat, we're going to understand how Yidden attain the level of Zeh. Pirish Hagdolas Haschar, top of page Tes. What does it mean, the increase and the greatness of the reward, which is Zeh Haschar HaYoyser Godel Shein L'maylo Mimenu. The Rebbe establishes that when you say something is great, something is big, it has to be a reward that can't be anything greater than it. He calls Manshi Yochel Yischar Godel Yoyser, as long as it could be a greater reward. The reward that's given up till now is not a great reward, not a big reward, not a large reward, truly so, because there's something greater, there's something more. As we see with kids a lot of times, I gave you a big piece, but the Chaim has a bigger piece than me. It's never big until it can be said it's big across the board, that nothing can be greater than it. So the Rebbe says, moving from this is understood. The increase and the greatness of the reward that is accomplished through withstanding a test. Like we said before, that the whole clip Sitra Achra was there for the person should be able to withstand the test. Who inyan aiskashrus ba'atzmus. What's the greatest reward? Not Gan Eden, not Nosati Gishmechem Beitam. The highest of the highest level is being bound up on Hashem's essence. Behind this means it's not just the levels of revelations and lights, because there's still something greater. If there's still something greater, you can't say that this is the great reward. But rather through the person withstanding the tests and challenges, he binds himself with Hashem's very essence. This is what the pasuk says, that Hashem is great and very much praised in the city of my God. Meaning, the emphasis is in the word Godel. Godless ha'atzmus, the greatness of Hashem's essence, is when he does his avodah. I guess he brings down Hashem and Ir Elokeinu, that even in this world he brings down, he makes it a godly place. Behind this means through the fact that a person withstands the test. And the Zeh of Sitra Achra, it does not affect him, does not influence him. Through that, he is connected and bounded with Hashem's essence. So now it's understood how Yidden can be called Amzu, because since they have this bond with Hashem, that is, Hashem is the Zeh, so therefore they become the Zu as well. So the next part is going to talk about why Moshe Rabbeinu is called Zeh, and what's his inyan over here with the concept. We already said about Zeh, connection with Moshe, but what's Moshe's agency in this whole process? Ois Daled, line 13. This bond that takes place with Hashem's essence takes place through Moshe. All of them are concerning Moshe, whom it says, the one who's called Zeh, as we mentioned before, is Moshe Rabbeinu. He will receive Zois from Zeh. And to this nation, Zeh, the Gemara says, Moshe is referring to Moshe. It says in the pasuk, this is Moshe the man. He will receive this Zuah Torah, it's referring to the Torah. So we see that Zois is going on Torah. From this is going, Zeh is going on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that this is my God, and I will glorify him. La'amzu, to this nation, Elu Yisrael Chulu, this is the Yidden, like it says, Amzu Yatzarti. What do we see from this Maimer Chazal? Moshe, who are Mekasher of Yisrael. Moshe is the one that binds the Yidden, and he draws down into the Yidden the level of Zeh. How come? Mishum Moshe Amachaber Umekasher Oilamois Uneshamis Malchus, because Moshe Rabbeinu has the capability and has the effect of joining and binding worlds and souls with Elikus. And tomorrow we're going to talk about that. It's not just Moshe Rabbeinu, but it's the Nasi of every generation that does this as well.